Hello, hello. All right, we are getting into Genesis 39. Now, I said in my last video, story of Joseph is one of my favorite stories in the Bible, and we're getting into it. So I'm going to enjoy this. This is Joseph and the Potiphar's wife. Now, I did a little extra research on this just because I enjoy it, like I mentioned. Potiphar, which we'll find out was an officer, the captain of the guard. So basically, the word Potiphar literally means devoted to the sun. So more than likely he was heavily involved in the religion, or he came from a religious family because they were mostly sun worshippers, or at least they were sects of sun worshippers. So he's an officer. A lot of officers, this word is sometimes translated to eunuch. So I think, and that's not saying that this guy was a eunuch. More than likely he wasn't, and we'll get into it because he has a wife. But at the same time, just spoiler alert, the wife tries to seduce Joseph. And if he is a eunuch, I just think it plays a kind of an extra little twist onto the story, Again, more than likely he's not, but the word that they use for the officer is sometimes translated to eunuch, just because so many high-ranking officers were made eunuchs. So it's not necessarily true that Potiphar in the story is one, but he could have been. And that explains a little bit more why the wife was so eager to seduce another man. I mean, it's not that eunuchs couldn't have women, especially once they reach levels of power. It was just that they couldn't, have the sexual fulfillment of that woman. And the woman then couldn't have that from the man either. And you couldn't have kids and inheritance and all that played in. Let's assume he's not a eunuch. I just found that very interesting. All right, so let's get right to it. Genesis 39, I'm going from the King James Version. And Joseph was brought down to, rewind. He's sold into Egypt by his brothers because the brothers were super jealous of him, being the favorite son of Jacob. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, that's whom Judah sold him to, the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did prosper in his hands. All right, so starting at verse 2 there, it's interesting to me how they're making the comment that, and the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man. So I wonder, you'd have to believe that, but it doesn't say it, that Joseph was with the Lord still. He still held true to his faith and his belief in the Lord. And that is the story of Joseph. They don't mention it, so I'm always curious, it ends up being 11 years that he's with this man, how much he had to go through his struggles. It wasn't just, I'm sure, super easy for him to be, God's got my back, woohoo, I can do this, I can do anything, I'm sure he had some down days, especially in the early days. But what's he do? He works hard. See, this is why I say the story of Daniel and Joseph are so inspiring to me, because Daniel really gets into the way to live in any society, in any culture, and that's hold on to your values. You can live in this culture, you can participate in this the society and have friends and everything, but just hold on to your values no matter what you do. And that's what Joseph does, and Daniel later on in the Old Testament we'll see. Same thing. Well, I was raised to be a hard worker, serve God, to take care of my neighbor, to be honest, stand upright in the eyes of the Lord. So I have to do that. Even if I'm a slave, it doesn't free me from serving the Lord, from holding some of these values and virtues. No matter what happens to me, I still have to do this, because that's the blessing. Remember, getting the blessing is understanding that it's not about this world, but it's about living for the next world. So Joseph seems to get it. And again, he's sure he goes through his struggles, but because he gets it, God blesses him. And it's so ridiculous, like, even again, from a secular point of view, think about it. It's a religion, a culture that teaches hard work, putting your, integrity first, being respectful and kind, generous, but working hard. That's an essential aspect of the Bible, of the teaching of God, of the message, is to be diligent, be a hard worker, even to be shrewd with the decisions that you make. Think a matter out. We talked about earlier, Jacob, how he thought a matter out instead of his sons who let the anger and envy fester. He just thought issues out. This is the teaching, and of course you're going to succeed. I mean, read the book Think and Grow Rich or How to Win Friends and Influence Others. This is exactly what they say too. You know, put your head to the grindstone or whatever the saying is and get to work. Hard work, diligent work, doing it with a positive attitude, doing it to serve the Lord. You're going to get ahead. You're going to succeed. And that just makes sense. Hard worker who's kind and generous and respectful and has integrity is going to get ahead. People like to think that nice guys finish last because hardship still happens to them. And we'll see hardship happens to Joseph here, just like Job later on in the Bible. David, hardship still happens, but you just get back to work. And then God blesses you all over again. So yeah, you're going to get knocked down. You're not going to win every fight as a boxer, you know, but you get back up and you give it your best the next time. And trust in the Lord. All right. And his master saw, again, so he's working hard. His master sees that he's working hard and sees that he's blessed by God. Now, I don't know if, I doubt that Potiphar converted, obviously, but somehow he found respect in the Lord, because it wouldn't say that he saw that he prospered. It would, and he prospered due to the Lord, unless Potiphar was aware that it was due to the Lord. Joseph more likely was open about his religion. The reason he works hard is because of God, and his God has now blessed him in many ways. Potiphar sees this. I doubt that means he converted. You know, I like to think of it as, and this sounds bad because I've talked bad about a lot of these old ancient cultures that weren't the Hebrews, but, and we're all aware of this, there's good people who aren't Christian. There's good people who are, you know, of any religion or any background. There's good people who can see and have eyes to see. Doesn't mean that they necessarily accept the truth always, but doesn't mean they're a bad person. And I think this is more likely who Potiphar is. You know, he probably doesn't ever come around to believing or worshiping Joseph's God, but he's well aware that this God has blessed Joseph. So I'm going to take advantage of that. I'm going to put him in charge of everything because he's so blessed by one of the gods in Potiphar's eyes. Maybe he did convert. More than likely, no. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer of his house and all that he had put into his hand. So this guy, who basically, when you look at translation, officer of it's like a chief of police. More than likely, he's Pharaoh, like head of Pharaoh's secret service. This Potiphar guy. He's the chief officer of Pharaoh's officers. He's like the head of his secret services. And Joseph, so he's a highly important guy. Joseph becomes like his steward. He's overseer of his household, his finances, his crops, where he makes his incomes and everything. So that's a pretty important position to be put in. He's basically, because Potiphar is off doing his work for Pharaoh. In comes Joseph managing Potiphar's estate, everything about his money, all that stuff. And it's all because of the blessing that God has, because he decided to put his, you know, head to the grindstone or ear to the grindstone, whatever it is, and get to work. Worked hard, did it with a pleasant attitude, wasn't abashed or ashamed to mention that it was due to his faith and his love for God. And God blessed him. Potiphar sees this, makes him the head of his household. So, and this happens in at least 11 years, because we know the time frame that he's with Potiphar for 11 years, and he may have taken him 4 years, 3 years, 6 years to become head of the household. Maybe it's taken him 2. Who knows? But for some amount of time, he works for him for 11 years. Who knows? Maybe he was just made head of the household, and then the Potiphar's wife tries to seduce him, and he gets thrown in prison. Who knows? Maybe, you know, think about that for a kick in the teeth. You know, he finally gets to the position, you know, and knocked back down. But does he get back up? We'll find out. Verse 5, and it came to pass from the time that he had made him overseer of his house and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught he had, save the bread which he did eat. and Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. So, not only Potiphar sees how good of a worker this Joseph is, puts him in charge of his house, and boom, his finances take off. He's good at managing money. He's good at managing efficiency for the workers and the planting of the crops, and they get big harvests and all this stuff. So everyone's happy right now. Potiphar's getting rich for basically doing nothing but buying a slave. Joseph has an easy life, and I'm guessing he enjoys doing it. He's probably like one of those type of minds who likes to stay busy and organize things and put puzzles together in that analytic type of way. So he's probably enjoying doing this stuff, and everyone's prospering, everyone's happy, right? Well, for a little while, at least. Long enough for him to really increase Potiphar's wealth and everything. And it came to, this is verse 7, and it came to pass, okay, the last one sentence of that, verse 6. And Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. So people saw that he was a man of integrity. It was known that he was a good person. He had a reputation of being an honest, good, hardworking person by the entire household, even probably people who weren't within the household. This Potiphar's guy's probably bragging to his friends who have their own estates, and they're like, man, I need to get me a Hebrew to manage my accounts. Right? Do times really change that much? All right, verse 7. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, lie with me. All right, so real quick, I'm going to read verse 6 in the New International Version. This one says, Joseph was very handsome and a well-built young man. So at the end here it says in King James, and Joseph was a goodly person and well-favored. New International, because this is the one that I grew up, reading in modern churches. Joseph was very handsome and well-built young man. So then, that was the New Living Translation. New International Translation says, now Joseph was well-built and handsome. The New King James Version says, now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. All right, so pretty much all the new ones say that he was handsome. This one says a goodly person and well-favored. That's different to me. So I tried looking into it, and everything online refers to the handsome thing, that it's just saying that he's handsome. I think it's more than that, but I will give it this. It more likely does just... he's handsome. Joseph's a good-looking dude. The Bible only says this about a couple other guys. I think it's David and his son Absalom that are like beautiful. So Joseph's a striking fellow. Let's give him that much. With a good reputation. And now the wife, and it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph and said, lie with me. Yikes. I mean, that's a lot of men's fantasy come true. I'm just saying, older woman, because at the most, Joseph at this time, he was 17, he was sold in slavery. Let's say this is year 11, which probably isn't. But that puts him at 28. So more than likely, I'm going to say in this time frame, he's probably like 25. I'm guessing she's older. Maybe she's hideous. That would make it easy. Or she's just ugly, That kind of makes the temptation a little less, probably, for Joseph. But also, he's probably a virgin at this point. He's been a slave his whole life. And if she's at all decent looking and she wants to bang him, that would be a hard temptation to avoid for any man. It really would. About 25, in the prime of your sexual peak, and this woman who's, let's say she's like 30, in the prime of her sexual peak. A lot of men, you hear about this all the time, men doing this sort of thing, women too, but men a lot of times, and it's not an easy thing to say no to. Now, I'm not saying I would do it, no, because a lot of reasons I wouldn't do it. One, because I know the Bible, I know what I'm supposed to do in these situations, but also, it would, like Joseph ends up saying, it'd be screwing over this guy that's giving him everything, and that's a low blow to me. In my eyes, I would think the same thing. But also, I'd be super scared. Like, I'd be like, dude, he'll kill me. All right. Verse 8, but he refused. Joseph refused, and said unto his master's wife, behold, my master wotteth not that what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath in my hand. There is none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee. Because thou art his wife, how then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? So he pulls up every point that I just made. Okay, your husband trusts me with everything. He's given me, no one is above me other than him in this household. I have a great life actually now, all basically given to me by God through your husband. And so how can I do this against him? And on top of that, it's a sin against God. So he just brings up all the points of why would I do this? I can't do. These are the list of reasons I can't. Your husband's good to me. He's kept nothing from me but you. So how could I do this wickedness to him, which is also a sin against God? I can't do it. Verse 10, and it came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her, to lie by her, or to be with her. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men in the house there within. And she caught him by his garment, saying, Lie with me, oh, lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand, and fled, and got him out. Alright, so let's just stop there for a second. First of all, day by day, day after day, she's trying to get with him. She's probably... Think about I just think of like a comedy montage of all these different ways that she's trying to seduce him, wearing a skimpy outfit. Oh, can you help me move this heavy chair? She's doing everything she can think of to try and seduce him, and he's just not going for it. He's still being a nice guy, but he's not going for it at all. If he was a little bit smarter, he'd learn one of the first rules you always learn: always cover your own butt in these situations. He shouldn't have been left alone in the household with her. That was a mistake, Joseph. She's been hitting on you day after day after day. You should have suspected, okay, I got to always have a witness with me for any of this stuff. I know this is before your story came out to warn the rest of us, but that's the smart thing, fellas. I know this sounds bad and like, oh, you can't trust people. No. Ladies, too. If you want to just avoid any kind of those conversations, possibilities of somebody lying about what you did or didn't do, don't go into the situation alone, okay? Unless you're with your spouse or your girlfriend or something, especially if you have a girlfriend or if that person has a boyfriend or if there's an age difference or something that could be misconstrued, always have somebody else as a witness to make sure nothing gets misconstrued, all right? That being said, Joseph's just like, no, he probably isn't thinking at all that she's going to try anything. As long as he keeps turning her down, it's fine. He doesn't want to tell Potiphar because that's probably, he likes the guy. And he's also scared. You have to put both things in. He probably doesn't want to bring the shame, and also he's probably scared. Who knows if Potiphar will believe him? This is his wife. So either he hurts a guy who's his friend, he hurts him by telling him the truth, or the guy doesn't believe him and kills him or something. So he's kind of in this really sticky spot. And finally, there's a time when they're in the household alone. She grabs him probably by, they probably have some sort of robe, tunic thing on, and grabs him by it and says, "Just take me, this is it." And he's probably just struggles to get free, and she rips the garment off of him instead of, he just takes off. That's so funny to me. How did no one see that, though? Because he had to get back to his apartments or whatever, his place that his cabin or whatever on the estate. So somebody had to see him run around in either naked or in his like under tunic or something, which had been like underwear for them. There had to be some witness somewhere seeing that. Like, was that Joseph? Is he naked? He just runs away. Smart. Run away from sin. Like, if you got to get away from something, get away from it. What's it in the New Testament? It's better to lose your hand than to have a hand that causes you to sin. It's not saying cut your hand off. It's saying, like, you'd be better off just to not sin. Like, sin is such a detrimental thing. You'd be healthier to, like, be missing a limb and not sin anymore. And you'd be healthier to run around naked away from sin than you would be to commit the sin. All right. And verse 13, and it came to pass when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and was fled forth, that she called unto the men of her house, and spake unto them, saying, See, he hath brought in an Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. What does that translate to? A great voice. And it came to pass, when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me, and fled, and got him out. And she laid up his garment by her until his Lord came home. Alright, so there's a few things I want to unpack about this. The first thing here in verse 13, it came to pass when she saw that he had fled, his garment in her hand, and was fled with, that she came unto the men of her house, and spake unto them, saying, He hath brought in an Hebrew unto us to mock us. She's talking about her husband there. He brought a Hebrew in here to mock us. Again, she doesn't like her husband. This is clear. Maybe he's a eunuch, like I mentioned, or maybe he just ignores her for his work or something. Maybe there's a big age difference. Clearly he's not taking care of business in the bedroom. So something's going on where there's this resentment between him and the wife and her. Because she says right here, he hath brought in an Hebrew. Joseph's the Hebrew. He didn't bring himself in. He hath brought in an Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me. All right, let's go over here in the New Living Translation to see how that sounds in this one. My husband has brought this Hebrew slave here to make fools of us. She's trying to get them to turn against her husband. Be aware that as far as like if you're you like shows like Law and Order or investigative things, you need a motive. What's the motive here? She does not like her husband. Okay, let's make this clear. She does not like her husband at all. She's getting the men to believe her story by downgrading her husband. He brought this Hebrew. She brings in his other culture because these men probably like Joseph. They notice the house is prospering under his rule. He's known for being an honest and guy of integrity who is hardworking. So she starts out by mocking her husband, who's not around. So they kind of lost contact and touch and loyalty to Potiphar. And then brings in this guy who came in and was given power over you guys. He gave him power over you guys, and he didn't give it to an Egyptian, one of us. He gave it to this Hebrew and to make us look like fools. He's so successful, and us Egyptians can't do crap. That's basically what he's saying to us. Right, guys? And now that guy tried to rape me. I got his garment right here. So she's trying to not only get Joseph in trouble but to save her own skin, but she's really trying to get them to turn against her husband. Because clearly, throughout this story, she does not enjoy or like her husband at all. And she leaves it there for her husband to get home. Now, I want to get into this because I know people out there who are anti-Bible or either think it's all made up or think it's a lie. Probably don't watch my videos. But if you ever run into somebody like that, or if you are someone like that, let's look at a few things. Because one of the main arguments is, how can we believe this? This is just written from his point of view, his story. It's written from the person who wins, it's their point of view on everything. So they're just going to write it to make themselves look good, right? So maybe Joseph did try to rape her, and she did scream, like she says, and he ran away then, and he's really guilty. He said, she said, what's going on here? Who's telling the truth? And my argument to that is, well, there's a few things. But the easiest, most secular argument that you can make to that is just go back to the last chapter that we read. Just as an example, and there's hundreds of these in the Bible. Judah. Okay, remember, Judah is the great-great-great-great-great-grandfather of Jesus. It's through Judah's line that we get Jesus, okay? So this is the patriarchy. Joseph's like an uncle, He's not the patriarch of Christ's line, of David's line. So it's not that important to make him look great. The Bible just writes what happens. Judah, who is Jesus' ancestor, it talks about him having sex with his daughter-in-law because he thinks that she's a prostitute and she hides her face. They don't make him look good. And this is the ancestor of Jesus. So why would they not lie? Why would they tell that story, that meaningless story that really adds nothing to the Bible? It's just there. Okay, you don't need it there. It's not necessary for the story of the Bible in any way whatsoever. It's just a story. This just happened, and they have it on record of happening, so they put it in there because they put everything in there that they had a record of happening. Okay? So why wouldn't they, if Joseph really did try and rape her, they would have just said it and let it lie where it lies. We see this all throughout the Bible. They don't hide the downfalls or the sins or the bad things that they did. In fact, they put them right out there for you to see. That's why it's so crazy when people say that they're probably making it so they look good. They don't make themselves look that good. Read the Bible. The Bible kind of makes the Israelites look really bad, actually. They keep turning away from God. They keep sinning over and over again and becoming corrupt. And then God punishes them for it. Like, why wouldn't, if it was all about making themselves look good, why wouldn't they write it in a way that it was like, oh, these perilous invaders came and our best warriors were, it was all their fault, not our fault. No, they put it in there. They're like, yeah, it's our fault. We did this. And this was his big sin. This is David's big sin. David, has one of his generals killed so he can have sex with the dude's wife. Like, that's their number one king. And that's one of the most known stories about David, is his big sin. They don't hide this stuff. So people are like, Joseph probably did actually rape her. Like, you don't really get it, do you? You didn't read the Bible. You didn't read any of it. I mean, come on. It's absolutely ridiculous. And then we already talked about motive of why she would do it and all the different theories on that. And we'll see it here in a little bit. It's kind of clear that it kind of leaves it up in the air. Potiphar doesn't really believe his wife that much either. He kind of punishes Joseph to save face here. But anyway, always believe the woman, right? Oh, that's going to get me in trouble. All right. Where am I at? Verse 15? No, verse 16. And she laid, she laid the garment for her home, waiting for her husband to get there. And 17, and she spake unto him according to these words, saying, the Hebrew servant which thou hast brought into us came in unto me to mock me. And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out. And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spake unto him, saying, after this manner did thy servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in prison. All right. Now, the New King James Version says, instead of wrath was kindled, it says his anger was aroused. The New International Version says anger was aroused. Yep. So they basically just all say the same thing. His anger was aroused. Now, what exactly did I mean earlier when I said... all right. That it's not... that Potiphar kind of might have suspected his wife a little bit as well. His anger's aroused. In this situation... a Hebrew slave who tried to sleep with his wife, you're dead. You're not in jail. You're dead. It doesn't say his anger was kindled towards Joseph, which is typically the way that the Bible's written. It just says his kindled. I'm guessing his anger was kindled in all. He didn't quite know what to believe, but he wasn't totally unbelieving that Joseph had actually acted on it. Again, because he would have just been killed. Why? He wouldn't put him in prison. A slave just tried to sleep with his wife. You're dead. You're not prisoned. So, and it says right here, the master took the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in the prison. Now, there's different levels. Every time there's a king's prison, there are obviously different levels, but not all of the prison cells in a king's prison are bad. Because a lot of times you have to keep like High Lord sons and stuff like that prisoner. Now, a lot of them are terrible. Like, he might have been in an awful prison, but some of them might not have been that bad. So, again, Because a lot of times the king's prisoners are people that the king wants to have kept alive. Like, he doesn't want them to be free, but he wants to be able to keep them alive to use them. So why wasn't Joseph just thrown in some ratty-ass prison for rapists, you know? He's not even an Egyptian, you know? He's not a citizen. He doesn't have any rights. He's a slave of a different culture. Not totally clear that Potiphar, in fact, believes his wife. I mean, Joseph had done nothing wrong in 11 years. No hint of being dishonest in any way. And then boom, this. And he probably, with the problems he and his wife had been having, his wife had probably lied to him quite a few times at that point. You know, I'm sure he was aware of the issues he and his wife had. All right. So again, he's thrown into prison, not killed. But the Lord was with Joseph and shewed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison, and whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him, and that which he did, the Lord made it to prosper. So again, this isn't like a lowly dungeons. Again, there's prison and dungeons. He's not in a dungeon. He's in kind of it's a prison with people that you don't want to treat awful, because you might set them free for some reason to be used for your benefit. But at the same time, you don't want them to be free because they might turn against you. Or they might have done something, you know. This is what's going on. You know, you can have the Hittites, you could have one of their princes, and if you kill him, they'll attack you. But if you keep him safe, but as a prisoner, you know, if you let him free, he might also attack you. But if you keep him prisoner, neither one of the two will happen, because they don't want him to die, you know, sort of thing. So he becomes like the same sort of thing. All right, I got knocked off. It took me 11 years to get to the top of that pedestal, knocked all the way back down. Well, I'm still going to serve God, and I'm still going to be honest and a man of integrity, and I'm going to work hard. Well, what do we got to do here? You know, well, these are the things that the prisoners are in charge of doing. These are the way it's organized. Meals, blah, 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 and this and that. Joseph starts just making sure everything gets done, running smoothly. The head of the guard sees this and is like, okay, hey, you know, you want to watch over this stuff for me? And eventually he starts running. He becomes the steward of the prison. He starts basically running the prison for the guy who's in charge of it all over again. He becomes the go-to guy in prison, you know, to make sure everything gets done, everything works right, everyone's okay. All over again. And we'll get into more about Joseph, but the story of Joseph, remember, always, always, always trust in the Lord, fear only the Lord, and work hard. That is so missed, I swear. It's never mentioned when the people talk about the story of Joseph anymore. And it's a crying shame, because the story of Joseph and Daniel is one about working hard. Put your head down and start moving forward and get work done, and do it with a pleasant attitude, and don't be ashamed to give all of your accomplishments to the Lord and say it's all because the Lord blesses me. And then he blesses you even more. And the more harder you work, the more blessings you get. And you feel better because you're getting all these blessings. And you're doing it for the Lord. It's like reciprocal, okay? It's mutually beneficial to do it this way. You're going to get blessing for working hard. No duh. You know, enter through the narrow gates, the path less traveled, all this stuff. Doing the harder thing is usually the right thing to do. And now, as far as an engineering standpoint goes, I always say work smarter, not harder. But it doesn't mean you're not working hard. It just means you're working smarter. All right. And also, again, I'm not trying to... I just did a Mother's Day lesson, and I talked about all the matriarchs and the powerful women in the Bible, and how, you know, they were very progressive. Like the women who came to Moses, and she totally revolutionized inheritance for women, because the Israelites were a country of just and righteousness. They saw that this was just and righteous and realized women should be allowed to inherit, and all this sort of things. Deborah, one of the judges, the rulers of the Israelites, one of the first, you know, female rulers in the ancient world in this area, like all this stuff. All these ancient cultures get mushed together in the way women got treated, and you can see clearly the Bible is, you've been lied to if people tell you that women just were treated awfully in the Bible, then you're not reading the Bible. It's just not true. That being said, these Egyptian and Canaanite women, they were a bunch of sleuths, okay? Let's just put it out there. And that's their religion. Like, you can't blame them. That's what their religion teaches, is to be sleuthy. And these were some sleuty sleuths. And this woman lied. It was quite obvious. He worked his way all the way up, and because he wouldn't bang his boss's wife, she framed him for rape, or attempted rape, or sexual assault. Doesn't this sound a bit familiar? Now, that being said, obviously there are people who do actually commit sexual assault and rape, and it's awful. It's one of the worst possible things you can do. But at the same time, there's a lot of people out there who will just make up a story to make themselves look better. This happened with, like, what's his name? He made up a story. That Jussie Smollett, that actor from Empire. People will make up stories to make themselves look better, especially if they don't see anything wrong with it. And she comes from a culture that doesn't see anything wrong with it. Joseph stayed true to his faith. He stayed true to what was right no matter what. Think about it. He wouldn't have gone to prison. He would have stayed the head of that household if he would have banged this probably good-looking woman. But he wouldn't do it because he knew it was wrong. He could have gotten his rocks off with a hot chick and been the ruler of this dude's household and stayed the ruler of his household. Potiphar may never have figured out. He's busy at work most of the time, you know? Could have done it forever, maybe. But he didn't. Because he knew it was wrong. He wouldn't do it even if it was beneficial to him. Even if doing the right thing was not beneficial, he knew that it was still the right thing. And serving God is always going to be more beneficial than sinning against God. All right. Everybody have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or good night. God bless.